Hey y'all, I've already done a few videos and it was just all over the place. I'm trying to cover everything that I can cover to somewhat go from like my past or whatever. So, okay, like, well, this is like just to explain to where I can like say I've seen or whatever. Like, okay, so since I didn't know what was wrong here, what was wrong here, or whatever, I pretty much just watched true crime stories. So along the way, I can say, okay, yes, I remember saying this story, or this story stuck out to me, or that story stuck out to me, or I think I had already shared a little bit about how some of the shows actually go into their religious family and stuff like that, or what they were known in this religion or that religion or whatever. But so a lot of the stuff that I talk about can somewhat base, I don't know, somewhat based on that, and anyways, um, like, so yeah, so I always knew that these guys seemed like the bad guys to me, but I didn't know why, or I didn't know what was wrong with them, especially from that very first experience of having to deal with them and having a messed up eye and stuff. And I am really tempted to show y'all the photo because it was so bad. I mean, I just didn't understand why they were asking about me about this. And then I'm like, what is wrong with you, man? Do you not see my eye? I mean, my friend, I'm sitting there feeling it, and my friend said it looked almost like a baseball. But, anyways, so obviously there's some trauma, and I'm just one case. So of course, what I've gone through from them coincides or whatever from their traumatic stuff too. So, and then to know where it kind of stems from, maybe it's very sad to me, you know, which could have end up going into a small testimony of how one time I was talking to my mom, and I was like, well, maybe he should, you know, and then and then for her to be like, but you're my daughter, you know. So it was only about at that time where I finally looked at it, probably like that. But goes into what I even just told my dad the other day. I was like, Dad, I was like, do you not see that this criminal here, I, I finally felt a little bit better to get away from this criminal here when this criminal was here? Saying he's not coming to come around here and mess with you. And I was like, Dad, that's the only time I felt safe to finally get away from him. I said, because the cops weren't doing it for me, which goes into the conversation that I was going to eventually get into. The first thing, besides the first thing that the blank lady said. And that's to come. Because and I'm like thinking, I let her speak, whatever, da da da. So, to go over some of the cases, some of the stuff I had to go through, 3 of them was what I was taught. Really, it's all there. Because I'm thinking I did those 3 videos in one day. What I was taught, really, it's all there. Because I believe I covered it in those 3 or some of the cases in those 3 videos. Now, there was so much stuff that I had already gone over in the other videos, and I was just all over the place and everything. So I don't know what all I was trying to cover, but I was just trying to show and tell, like, this is the true crime stories that I've watched before. Now, the very first thing, like, show series that I remember getting into or watching was Criminal Minds. Now, turns out it was the FBI, says at the beginning, not true stories. See now, it's true stories. Yeah. Well, and now I just voiced it, and hopefully it won't be taken away from somewhere, but whatever. I'm just blaming on them. Write them a letter. Can you call them? I don't. Okay. Anyways, but just to show and tell that series is about that. Let me hurry up and tell y'all this. There was a show about a black book. Now, this girl ended up with the black book, and her father or her parents got a divorce probably because of all that, and she ended up pretending like she was a prostitute, and then she started killing people off the black book uh, list and stuff. Well, at the end, she ends up committing suicide, and the FBI worker at the end ends up getting the black book. So, thought that was interesting. Thought I might share in case you hadn't watched the show and didn't know. I actually started watching and kind of was going through which the story that they had, because they'll tell us state, and so I was writing down the town and the state. So I was writing down what the stories were. Now, when I did watch it, the one that was in my state, I didn't ever knew about a story that they had played or anything. And for me to have known that I've watched this series, I mean, you know, these true crime series, I mean, it has a title and everything, but it's true crime story here, true crime story there, and da da da. So, because I'm like, well, what is the problem here? Okay, so what all I covered in the last ones, I was just all over the place, and I was like, I need to get this right. Sorry. And then, okay, so to cover those cases, or that real quick, talking about that, okay. Like the medicine, because, and so yes, I wasn't trying to give people an excuse for drug or alcohol use or abuse. What I'm trying to show and tell is that these people should know that, or people should, it's only right for people to really know, like, the truth. Like, the system is messed up. Like, I just feel like that's kind of abuse or something. And then they're going to say that there's a national opiate addiction problem, but sometimes people need to take responsibility for their own actions. So this is just kind of an example to show and tell that, like, I'm telling them I'm not suicidal, I'm not suicidal, I'm not suicidal. It's not exactly how it went, but then it's like, well, here's some antidepressants. Here's antidepressants. And I'm sitting there like, but I'm not suicidal. And then to go into the Luciferians know what they're doing, because that very first case, they lost the paperwork. So if I was able to be in a group meeting to discuss the weird, crazy event that happened with the police and everything like that, they would have said, that's not right. That sounds weird. So in return, the case when I pled guilty to the drug dealer's marijuana, ultimately, I mean, dude, I just got to laugh about it, right? I mean, that's the only thing on my record or whatever. But either way, because of everything else, whatever. But ultimately, I pled that, and then so when that case came up, that was when they were like, oh, they had lost the paperwork. So does that make sense? So that's why I say the Luciferians know what they're doing. So everybody else in these categories don't know, and probably wouldn't see the abuse because they know what they're doing. Make sense? Okay. Let me go ahead and say this really quick. So, of course, along the way, I was like, okay, yes, I'm not one of those cookie cutter type Christian people, you know. And, of course, I've always seen the problem where here's the church, they're saying it should go like this, and then here's the state and all this and that and the other. And people should not feel like outsiders at the church. So I've always realized why should they feel like outsiders with church? Does that make sense? Because the nicest people you can meet are at church. I mean, really. But, I always saw and understood that there was some kind of issue here, and I really just didn't know exactly what all it was and stuff like that. That makes sense? So, the people in the church, they think, for the most part, what I see, and even I've known for and seen for a long time that I knew something was wrong here. But they, for the most part, they think everything's working. So, you know, for me to not fit this mold for people or anything like that, either way it goes around, that makes sense, or mold. I mean, it's always been kind of a weird predicament for me, because I'm like, what is wrong here? because that was my main problem for so long, you know. But they were you know, with the medicine, it's like they were work together, however it went, to keep me at that non seeing and understand way, which is kind of really scary for them to even know someone or something. I don't know. That makes a lot of sense. But I had already done a few videos and it was all over the place on the other ones. So I'm just going to cut it here and stuff. Just so I could cover that and then the Christian part and then what I've watched in the church part. That makes sense. Medicine, da da da. Because I want to just show and tell that, you know, I'm not giving people an excuse for their type of behavior. I just can see how the systems can even mess with people so much more than what people kind of see, I guess, or something. All right, God bless. I'll see y'all soon.